Hello fellow entrepreneurs! Welcome to my channel where I read and summarize books relating to being a better entrepreneur. I've met no one who I thought was wise who didn't read. I believe reading is essential for those who seek to rise above the ordinary. So today, we will be learning from Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Pinocchio is a story about a little puppet who gets his wish. He loses the strings that used to control his life and becomes a real, independent boy. But Pinocchio didn't realize that this meant dealing with all of life's dangers, as well as the painful lessons learned through honesty, friendship, and family. Pinocchio, like many other popular myths, fairy tales, and religious parables, portrays the task of finding meaning in life as a balancing act between order and chaos, the familiar and the exotic, or safety and adventure. People continue to pass down and reread historical texts, as well as work with philosophers such as Socrates and Aristotle, because we yearn for universal values and rules to give meaning to our lives. These are the themes that author Jordan Peterson considered when compiling a new list of 12 such values to aid modern people in navigating today's chaotic times. Rule number 1. Fix your posture. So, if you want to gain an advantage, remember the first rule: fix your posture. With the same tenderness that you would for a loved one, look after yourself. You wouldn't doubt the doctor and leave the prescription unfilled if your dog was sick and the vet prescribed medication, would you? Despite this, 1/3 of people disobey medical prescriptions, which begs the question, why do we treat our pets better than we do ourselves? Part of the reason is that we feel self-loathing when we're constantly aware of our flaws, which can lead to unnecessary self-punishment and a belief that we're unworthy of feeling good. As a result, we are more concerned about others than we are about ourselves. This belief that we are unworthy can be traced all the way back to Adam and Eve's expulsion from the Garden of Eden. In this metaphorical story, Adam and Eve represent all human beings, and they are duped by an evil serpent into eating the forbidden apple of knowledge. Humans are seen as forever corrupted with wickedness if they follow the snake's advice. While the story of the Garden of Eden makes us aware of our dark side and can reinforce the feeling that we don't deserve good things, it can also be read in a different light. It's not just us who are corrupted, but the entire world. The humans and the serpent of the garden represent the natural order and chaos of the entire world. This duality of nature is also represented in Eastern philosophy by the two sides of the yin-yang symbol. There is a light and a dark side, but both sides contain a portion of the other, and neither can exist without the other. Harmony is achieved in this scenario by striking a healthy balance between light and dark, and one should avoid going too far in either direction. If a parent tries to protect their child from being exposed to anything bad, they will only be replacing chaos with the tyranny of too much order. To put it another way, trying to be perfect is pointless. Rule number 2. Care for yourself like how you'd care for someone else. This brings us to the second rule. Care for yourself like how you'd care for someone else, or said another way, treat yourself as if you were a loved one. So look after yourself, but don't fight chaos because it's a losing battle. Also, instead of focusing solely on what makes you happy, try to focus on what is best for you. You may not have wanted to brush your teeth or wear your mittens as a child, but these are important habits to develop. You must define your goals as an adult in order to define who you are and the path you want to take in life. Then you'll figure out what steps you should take and what actions are best for you. Rule number 3. Surround yourself with people who want the best for you. The wrong friends can bring you down, so pick your friends carefully. One of Jordan Peterson's childhood friends never left the prairies of Fairview, Alberta, in northern Canada. Instead, he stayed in town and became one of the town's ne'er-do-wells. By the way, I had to look up this term since I hadn't heard it before, but Jordan Peterson uses it a lot in his book. So the definition of a ne'er-do-well is a person who is lazy and irresponsible. So please keep that in mind as I use that word in this video. Jordan Peterson would return home every now and then to catch up with his friend, and with each visit, his friend's slow, sad decline became more apparent. What was once youthful potential has now become a source of resentment among the elderly. Those ne'er-do-wells, it became clear to Jordan Peterson, were dragging his friend down and holding him back in life. And this is something that can happen to anyone, at any time, in any location. When an underachiever is placed in a team of high performers at work, a similar dynamic can emerge. The manager may believe that by doing so, the problematic employee will pick up good habits from the other employees. However, studies have shown that the opposite is more likely to occur, with bad habits spreading and lowering everyone's performance. This is why the third rule is to surround yourself with supportive friends, as these are the types of friendships that can help you change your life for the better. Picking your friends is a wise decision that is neither selfish nor snobby. Friendships that are supportive and encouraging go both ways. When you need a boost, they'll be there for you, and if your friend needs assistance recovering from a setback or improving, you'll be there for them. Rule number 4. Never compare yourself to others. When Jordan Peterson left Fairview for college, he joined a group of like-minded people who supported one another in their studies and other endeavors, such as starting a newspaper and running a successful student union. When your friends don't tolerate your wallowing in negativity, you know you have good friends. They'll want the best for you, so they'll encourage you to snap out of it and get back on track. Progress is made by comparing yourself to your previous accomplishments, not by comparing yourself to others. There was a time when being a big fish in a small pond was a thing. However, thanks to the internet, even the idea of a small community has become obsolete. We're all part of a global community these days, and no matter where you are, someone is always better than you. This leads to the subject of self-criticism. It is now necessary to be critical of oneself. Otherwise, we would have nothing to strive for, no motivation to improve, and our lives would quickly become meaningless. Fortunately, it's human nature to see the present as lacking and the future as promising far more. This tendency serves a purpose. It keeps us motivated to move forward and take action. Self-criticism, on the other hand, can become ugly when it becomes all about comparing ourselves to others. When this happens, we lose track of our progress quickly. First and foremost, this forces us to think in binary terms. We've either succeeded or failed. This prevents us from noticing the small but significant improvements that occur over time. By focusing on a single aspect of our lives and exaggerating it, comparisons also cause us to lose sight of the big picture. Let's say you're holding back on the previous year and realize you weren't as productive at work as some of your colleagues. You might feel like a complete failure right away. However, if you zoom out and consider all aspects of your life, you may find that you have made significant improvements in your family life. Therefore, the fourth rule is family life, others, and to always judge yourself against your own previous achievements. You can also keep moving forward by comparing current results to previous ones. If you begin to believe that you are always winning, this is a sign that you need to take more risks and set more challenging goals for yourself. Imagine you're a home inspector when reviewing your progress. This entails examining everything from top to bottom and categorizing each issue. Is it a flaw in the appearance or a flaw in the structure? Make a list of things that need to be improved before you give your stamp of approval. This method is likely to keep you so focused on yourself that you will be unconcerned about how you compare yourself to others. Rule number 5. Teach your children to abide by society's rules. It is the responsibility of a parent to raise a responsible and kind child. If you've ever witnessed parents ignoring a misbehaving child, you may have wondered whether they're simply bad parents or cleverly allowing the child to tire himself out. Child-rearing methods have evolved over time, often as a result of the age-old nature versus nurture debate and different viewpoints on the types of instincts we're born with. In the 18th century, the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau promoted a popular belief that our prehistoric ancestors were sweet, gentle, and childlike. They blamed our history of war and violence on civilization's corrupting influence on us. However, we now have a better understanding of how people are born with aggressive instincts and must learn to become kinder, gentler, and more civilized adults. After all, you may recall how rowdy children can be on the playground. According to Jordan Peterson, it is up to parents to ensure that their naturally aggressive child learns how to be a well-adjusted adult, which brings us to the 5th rule. Parents must raise a responsible and likable human being, not just a friend. This can be difficult because no one enjoys being the bad guy. Children, on the other hand, are aggressive because they have a natural instinct to test boundaries in order to discover where society's lines are drawn. As a result, when drawing those lines, a parent must be firm and decisive. While this may not sound like fun, consider this. If they don't learn these lessons from a loving, understanding parent, they will learn them later in a way that is certain to be less loving and understanding. So let's take a look at 3 key parenting techniques. The first is to keep the rules as simple as possible. Too many rules lead to dissatisfied children who are constantly confronted with obstacles. So stick to a few simple, easy to understand rules, like never biting, kicking, or hitting anyone unless it's in self-defense. The second is to use the least amount of force possible. Only when the consequences are made clear can effective and fair discipline be implemented. The punishment must also fit the crime, meaning that it should only be as harsh as is necessary to teach a child not to break the rule again. Sometimes a disappointed expression is all that is required. Other times, a week without video games may be required. The third option is to arrive in pairs. Children are cunning, and they will try to get their way by pitting one parent against the other, so maintaining a united front is essential. Also, while every parent makes mistakes, if you have a supportive partner, you'll be more likely to notice and correct them. Rule number 6. Take responsibility for your own life before criticizing others. The sixth rule of life states that you should take responsibility for your own life before passing judgment on the rest of the world. Another Russian author, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, believed that it was possible to reject life's cruelty, even when it was being cruel to you. Despite his service as a communist fighting against the Nazis during World War II, Solzhenitsyn was imprisoned by his own country after the war. And, as if life in a Russian gulag wasn't bad enough, he was diagnosed with cancer while incarcerated. Despite this, Solzhenitsyn did not hold the world responsible for his fate. He accepted responsibility for his role in supporting the Communist Party that had imprisoned him and resolved to use the remaining time he had to do something good and meaningful in the world. He wrote The Gulag Archipelago, a history as well as a damning indictment of the Soviet camps he'd witnessed firsthand. The book was instrumental in dispelling any remaining support for Stalin's brand of communism among intellectuals in the world. Sacrifice can be a meaningful act, and we should prioritize meaning over instant gratification. Have you heard the tale of the monkey who got his hand caught in the cookie jar? According to a legend, a cookie was left inside an open jar, and the jar's opening was just large enough for the monkey's hand to enter, but not large enough for his fist to emerge with the treat inside. As a result, if he insisted on trying to keep his treat, he'd be stuck. The moral of the story is that greed has a cost. The monkey was captured because he refused to give up the cookie. How does this compare to human behavior? How many people indulge in daily pleasures that aren't in their best interests? How many people are unwilling to make sacrifices for their own good? One of the consequences of viewing the world as a pit of despair is that it becomes much easier to justify a life based on temporary pleasure that will make it more bearable. Plus, it can't be that bad if it makes you happy, right? Binge eating and drinking, drug use, and other self-harming behaviors all follow this logic. The other side of this debate is sacrifice, the kind that results in better things in the future by sacrificing something now. This dates back to ancient times, when tribes would set aside food to help those in the community who couldn't hunt or farm get through the winter. Rule number 7. Focus on a higher purpose, not instant gratification. This leads us to rule number 7, which Peterson states is to prioritize meaningful goals over immediate gratification. You may believe that this is a simple concept that most people already follow. After all, we give up our time to go to work and work long hours now in order to take a vacation later or relax on a beach in the summer. This goes beyond self-sacrifice. There are big and small things we can give up for the greater good, and the bigger the sacrifice, the more rewarding it can be. It may be beneficial to consider the lotus flower. This plant begins its life at the bottom of a lake and gradually emerges from the darkness, eventually breaking through the water's surface and blossoming in the sun's rays. To put it another way, if you stick with something and are willing to make sacrifices to achieve your goal, you will be rewarded. Rule number 8. Find your personal truth and live it. Lies are a common self-deception tool, but we should strive to live truthfully. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, believed that the strength of a person's spirit could be measured by how much unadulterated truth they could tolerate. Despite the fact that truth is often regarded as a valuable commodity in our culture, we continue to tell lies on a regular basis. One of the primary motivations for lying to ourselves and to others is to obtain what we believe we desire. These are what Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler called life lies, as they're defined as the things we'll do and say to make an ill-conceived goal a reality. You might imagine your retirement is taking place on a scheduled beach in Mexico, complete with an endless supply of margaritas. This type of goal can be so appealing that you'll continue to delude yourself into believing it's achievable, even as events pile up that make it seem increasingly improbable. You might even develop allergies to the sun, sand, and alcohol if you keep lying to yourself about your perfect plan, which isn't really a plan at all because you haven't identified any concrete steps that can make it a reality. These kinds of delusions are frequently associated with our ability to convince ourselves that we already know everything we need to know. This is a particularly foolish viewpoint to hold because it stifles our natural desire to learn and grow. This establishes rule number 8. Stop lying to yourself and others and start telling the truth. You don't have to abandon all of your lofty ambitions, but you should be flexible so that your objectives are realistic and reflect reality. As a result, as your understanding and worldview evolve, so should your objectives. If your life is off track, it may be time to question the current truth you're believing, the one that makes you feel weak, rejected, or unworthy, and reaffirm your personal truth so you can get back on track. Rule number 9. Learn to be a good listener. Conversation should be used to learn and grow rather than to compete. Socrates, the ancient philosopher, is still regarded as one of the wisest men who ever lived thousands of years after his death. One of the reasons for this is his belief that the one thing he knew for sure was that he didn't know anything, which drove his conversations and his eagerness to learn. It should be a similar process to thinking when you engage in genuine conversation. Listening to yourself while exploring two sides of an issue is what it means to think things over. As a result, you're essentially creating your own internal dialogue, which can be challenging given the need to accurately represent both sides while remaining objective in your conclusion. This is one of the primary reasons why people converse with one another. It allows them to more easily present opposing viewpoints and reach a consensus. Even children do this. If one child thinks it would be fun to play on a roof, they may suggest it to a friend, who then warns them about the dangers. The subsequent discussion allows the child who had the original idea to consider the new perspective, assess the likelihood of someone falling and injuring themselves, and hopefully make the best decision possible. Conversations, on the other hand, do not always proceed in this manner. Instead, one person, or possibly both, will refuse to listen and treat the conversation as a competition in which they must triumph in order to validate their preconceptions. So, instead of listening to what the other person has to say, they'll be thinking about what to say next or acting as if it's a game of one-upsmanship. This is why the 9th rule is to pay attention to what others have to say, assuming you can learn something from them. Listening and then summarizing or recapping out loud what the other person just said is a simple way to improve your conversational skills. This serves multiple purposes. It ensures that you've heard things correctly while also aiding memory retention. It also reduces the likelihood of distorting or oversimplifying details to suit your point of view. It's painful to take in information that requires you to change your ideas and preconceptions, and it's even more painful to take in information that requires you to change your ideas and preconceptions. However, you must pay this price as part of the wonderful process of learning and growing. Rule number 10. Define your problem precisely to make it manageable. Life's complexities should be addressed with clear, precise language. Life is a vast and complex tapestry, but we tend to see the only isolated parts that we need to see. When you see an apple on the ground while walking, you probably don't consider the branch, tree, roots, and soil that were all connected before it fell. The reason for this is that we tend to only notice or pay attention to things that are either helpful to us or in the way of our goals. The apple attracts our attention because it symbolizes food and nourishment. However, we ignore the tree and the soil because they are useless in meeting our needs. Of course, we can't think about everything all the time. The world is far too complicated for that, so the mind simplifies things to help us get on with our lives. However, every now and then, something can occur that shakes our worldview and makes things appear chaotic. That is why rule number 10 is so crucial. Use precise definitions to manage your problems. When your body breaks down and you become ill, the same thing needs to happen. Because there could be a variety of issues at play, you must inform your doctor of your specific symptoms. Is your stomach hurting or do you have a fever? Is it possible that it started after you ate something? What was it exactly? You can reestablish order and begin to feel better by being precise. Even your relationships will run more smoothly if you use precise language. Is there something your partner does that irritates you, such as failing to clean up after themselves? The sooner you can be honest and precise with them, the better. Rule number 11. Accept that inequality exists. Some postmodernists argue that gender is entirely a social construct or a tool for men to oppress women, and that hierarchies are created by the rich to exploit the poor. Peterson disagrees. Peterson criticizes the postmodern assertion that gender is merely a social construct, and that there are no differences between male and females. He disagrees that there needs to be complete equality in behavior and preference at all times. Instead, Peterson calls for recognition that inequality does exist. Males and females have different natural instincts and different preferences, and we shouldn't deny that they exist. If we ignore this, we can create policies that force people against their nature, which can have unintended consequences. For example, Peterson feels we're at risk of feminizing young boys by excessively protecting them from danger. Boys by nature are more aggressive. This is biological. They want to prove competence to each other. They want to inhabit that level of risk that pushes them to grow. He thinks that we should just let boys be boys. Rule number 12. Take time to appreciate the good things in life. Life is difficult and full of sorrows, so it's important to appreciate the small pleasures. Have you ever had to look after someone who was ill? It could be one of life's most difficult obstacles to overcome. Since she was 6 years old, Jordan Peterson's daughter has suffered from severe arthritis. She has been in excruciating pain for years, requiring numerous injections and joint replacement surgeries. You might think life is unfair if you have a daughter in this situation, but it's important to remember that the dark bits of pain, suffering, and sorrow are what give the good moments their value. Take, for example, Superman. This character was extremely popular when he was first introduced. However, the comic book writers continued to bestow power upon him until he was virtually unstoppable. Naturally, readers began to find him to be extremely boring. Superman's victories are hollow if there is no danger. Similarly, good times would be meaningless if we didn't have to fight our way through difficulties and pain to get there. This is why rule number 12 is so important. Make the most of even the tiniest pleasures that life has to offer. You'll be sure to embrace life and appreciate everything good that comes your way if you follow this rule. You'll also be able to see yourself through the difficult times, even if they last a long time. After years of pain and discomfort, Jordan Peterson's daughter found a new physiotherapist who helped her regain mobility, a sense of normalcy, and a significant reduction in pain. There may be more complications down the road, but for the time being, they're both content to enjoy the benefits. This is the best attitude to have. It's the kind that makes you stop and pet a cat on the sidewalk when you pass one. Remember, just as there is no order without chaos, there is no day without the darkness of night. Life is full of suffering, but it is also what gives our perseverance meaning and makes the moments of peace so rewarding. Life is a constant struggle filled with trials and tribulations, and if there's one thing you can count on in life, it's that there will always be more problems. But, however fleeting these moments may be, there is beauty and joy to be found. All you can do is give it your all, be honest and truthful, and avoid being self-centered and arrogant. It's also critical to accept responsibility for your own fate, rather than blaming others or the world for your shortcomings. In the end, only you have the power to improve your life. This wraps up the summary from the book, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Thank you for sticking out through the very end of this video. Nothing helps out my channel more than y'all watching the entire video. These videos take a long time to make, and is a labor of love. If you would like to contribute by buying me a cup of coffee, I'll leave the link below along with a link to this book. And as always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and watch these videos that might pique your interest. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, keep reading.